Hello, in this video I'm going to show you my first game in the Langley since patch 5.3 went live. And I'm showing you this video because I didn't really get a chance to play around with the aircraft carrier balance changes on the test server, so I'm kind of using this as an example. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, well, all the aircraft carriers have gotten a bunch of new aircraft. I'm just watching the fighters here, see how fast they were going. Because that was the big change for the Langley. I mean, other than new models, new aircraft and all that. Basically, the aircraft gets a lot faster at low tiers and kind of the same at high tiers. But for the Langley in particular, there's one other big difference, and that is that it gets a third squadron and a dive bomber squadron. Which, I think, after playing this game and playing around a bit, thinking a bit, it's actually made the Langley more powerful than it was before. But it's also made the Langley much more dependent on luck. And that is because it still only gets 30 aircraft in total, but it has 18 in the sky at the start, which means that if your aircraft all get shot down on the first wave, then, well, you're basically screwed. You're down to 4 aircraft in each squadron, which is really gonna hurt your chances in the game later on. You see me, I've sent my fighters forward to scout, and we encountered some enemy fighters, but they pulled back, so I'm just kind of getting my fighters to circle around the enemy fleet, just try and spot everybody, while my bombers are coming in for an attack run against this Miyogi. And just seeing my allied fighter has charged straight over the enemy fleet and is attacking, well, chasing down the enemy fighters, heading back to the Hosho. We do have an advantage here. On my team it's 2 Langleys versus a Hosho and a Langley, which means we should be able to win air superiority. Yeah, my bombers have arrived, so I'm bringing my torpedo bombers in. And because this is an American aircraft carrier, I tend to do manual attacks. They are just very powerful in these ships, and we do run risks, but I think it's worth it. I see the Miyogi starts turning, so I pull my squadron out of its attack and order them to a different position to try and hit the Miyogi broadside on. Last minute adjustments, and there's a chance I'm going to hit the wicks here as well. And, ooh. Well, I hit the wicks, but my torpedo hit an arms, so the wicks actually saved the Miyogi from taking an extra torpedo there. Do 10,000 damage, and here come my dive bombers. And this is the, well, big benefit that the Langley gets after this patch. And again, I'm doing manual attacks because why not? They are still pretty powerful. I go away to see what the enemy are doing, order my fighters to attack the enemy Langley's dive bombers, and I get 3 hits and start 2 fires. So that's pretty good. Looks like the Hosho's torpedo bombers are up in the north attacking our battleships. And I switch my fighters to attack the Langley's fighters. Basically, I get incredibly lucky here. I shoot down the enemies. I get the first 2 kills of the enemy fighter, which basically means I'm going to just slaughter the squadron, even though we are in the same aircraft and we did have the same numbers to start with. That's kind of what I mean by luck. I shot down 6 of its fighters and lost only 2 of my own because, well, I got the first kill, which means that from then on I had more hit points in my squadron and I was doing more damage per second, or had a higher probability of doing the required damage per second. That I didn't explain that well. Whatever, you know what I mean. I had more aircraft, they had less, which gave me a pretty huge advantage, which means that now it's lost all of its fighters, and it just lost all of its dive bombers to myself and my ally, and I'm chasing down all of its torpedo bombers. So essentially this enemy Langley's gonna have the situation that I said might happen, where you lose all your aircraft in your first strike, and as I said, it's not gonna have a very good game. I've caught up with its torpedo bombers, and, well, the squadron's not going to last very long under my fire, and my allies have just arrived to back me up. But there's only 2 torpedo bombers left, 1 torpedo bomber left, and that's it. See the Hosho's torpedo bombers heading back home, but lost contact with them, but I chase off after them, spotted them again. But they're going to land before I arrive, so I order my fighters to attack the Hosho's fighters who are chasing my allies' dive bombers. The Hosho does have some fairly powerful AA guns, but I found in this situation it was worthwhile to essentially fly over its AA guns just to try and help my ally preserve its dive bombers. My ally disagrees, of course, and lets me go in by myself, but that's what happens in multiplayer games when you try and support your team. I'm eventually able to catch up to the fighters. Here I'm engaging them 4-on-2. So again, this is probably going to go my way. Well, 4-on-1 now, it's definitely going to go my way, and I'm probably not going to take much in the way of losses either. Actually, I took no losses at all. My bombers are back up in the air, so I order them south to try and engage the enemy ships. And meanwhile, I send my fighters back to where the Langley was. I kind of feel it's a bit mean, but I know that the Langley's got no AA gun, so I thought it was safer to hang around it than the Hosho. I had realised it's got no aircraft left, which is why it was mean of me to do this, but whatever. Spot the Langley's fighters, it's only got a couple of them left. I know it's those, it has to be its last fighters, but they are enemy aircraft, so I chase them down and we'll shoot them down anyway. Got my dive bombers here and they're going to attack this Wyoming. Oh, and there's that Wix from earlier, but we'll get the Wyoming. Just order them back to get a slightly better angle to attack from. Oh, and we shot down the Langley's fighters. My torpedo bombers come in. 3 bomb hits, 2 fires on the Wyoming. So hopefully these torpedo bombers can start some flooding. That looks pretty good. My fighters need something to do, so I pan away to look at my fighters. And that's when I managed to get a magazine detonation on the battleship. So, 1 battleship down. When I was saying you have to be lucky in the Langley, I didn't mean like that, but it does help. So yeah, first skill, only took 3 torpedoes and 3 bombs, but I sunk a battleship. And then we shot down, I believe, the last of the Langley's bombers, which means that it's now completely out of aircraft. And we're only 7 minutes into the game. So that's the downside of the new aircraft loadout for the Langley. That can happen, and if it had won the fighter engagement against me, if it had shot down my aircraft first instead of the other way around, which, you know, could have happened quite easily, it could well have, you know, shot down all my aircraft and then gone and engaged my allies' fighters and probably would have still taken fairly heavy casualties, but it might still have aircraft in the game at this point. So it's basically the only reason this Langley's had such a bad game is because I was incredibly lucky in the initial moments of our fighter engagement. I don't think things would have turned out that much differently, just because it's 2 Langleys versus a Langley and a Hosho. We are eventually going to win the air superiority battle unless we screw up. But yeah, it would have been nicer for the enemy Langley if it hadn't have gone this way. Anyway, you saw me doing a bit of... I wasn't quite sure where these torpedo bombs were going. I initially thought they were going for the battleships, but then they didn't attack, so I was sending my fighters to intercept them when they came back, because I didn't think I'd arrive in time. Then they didn't attack the battleship, so I thought they must be going for the aircraft carriers down the back. By aircraft carriers, I mean myself. So I started heading that way to intercept them, but they didn't. So I just came here and fought them, and then after me and my allies' fighters arrived, they started attacking our battleships. I let the first squadron I encountered go because the second squadron hadn't dropped its torpedoes yet, so I wanted to focus on this one. And we did manage to make the first enemy squadron avoid all its torpedoes, but the second squadron's going to get 1 torpedo on target. But well, the enemy lost 6 bombers in this attack, so 6 bombers for 1 torpedo hit. Probably not worth it, especially at tier 4 where you don't have a lot of aircraft in reserve. I've ordered my bombers in towards these enemy cruisers which are threatening the base. I actually changed my mind though, and I sent my torpedo bombers south to the battleship. Basically I think that my dive bombers are going to be sufficient to deal with at least one of these enemy ships. I see that the Kolberg there got destroyed, and I decided the Kuma's about to get destroyed as well. So I also send my dive bombers down south, and on the way they managed to shoot down the Kuma's fighter plane. There's enemy fighters launching a manual attack on thin air. Not surprisingly, it doesn't shoot down any of our aircraft, but it does waste a lot of ammunition. My fighters, of course, are back on the aircraft carrier rearming. We've shot down 21 aircraft, 20 of them from our fighters, so yeah, they needed more bullets. But it hasn't been costless for us. We've actually only got one fighter in reserve now. So even when things are going well, as they are for me in this game, you still don't have a lot of reserves to make mistakes with. Anyway, do a few last minute adjustments to the attack in the Wyoming, which means I'm under anti-aircraft fire for longer than I should be, but I actually have done a lot. I'm not that great at manual attacks yet. But no casualties. Get 3 torpedoes on target, 2 torpedoes on target, we do start flooding. And I see that it's using its damage control ability as well as its flooding, so I decided to just finish it off with my dive bombers. And there we go. That's my second battleship sunk.
Enemy battleship destroyed.
And my fighters are up in the air, so I'm seeing them chasing after the Hosho's fighters. The Hosho also has a low aircraft reserve limit, so I also suspect that it's getting quite low on aircraft. From memory, the Hosho can lose all of its squadrons shot down once, and it's got the exact same in reserve. No, actually that can't be right, I must have a little bit more than that. But still, I've shot down a number of the Hosho's aircraft, and my allies got a few more, so it can't have a lot left. And what you saw me doing there when I was panning the map around is I'm actually ordering my aircraft carrier to go be very aggressive. And I was going to order my fighters to go around this battleship to try and find the Hosho, but the Hosho's torpedo bombers are coming in, and as I said, it can't have a lot of aircraft left, so I really want to shoot these guys down. Basically, I thought at the time if I could destroy this attack, basically it means the Hosho's out of the game as well. They won't be able to have any strike capability left. Or at least that was my thinking. Enemy bombers are going to attack the Wyoming, but abort at last minute, so I switch to the next squadron coming in. And the Wyoming's got a fair bit of anti-aircraft fire going up as well. So those bombers are shot down before they even arrive at the target. So I switch my fighters back to the second squadron, which did manage to get torpedoes off and sink one of our battleships. While that was happening, you also saw me order my bombers down towards the enemy cap, where I know there's that Miyogi I torpedoed earlier. And yeah, my allies have now arrived, so these bombers aren't going to survive. But they did a bit better that time. They lost, well actually probably not, they lost 8 fighters and probably still only got 1 torpedo on target, but that 1 torpedo did sink a battleship. So it might have been worth it. Now I'm ordering my fighters around the battleship to try and find the Hosho, which I suspect is sitting in that corner. But while I'm doing that, I just decide to focus on my bombers attacking this Miyogi, which, well, it's kind of unfortunate because we do spot the enemy fighters shortly, and I'm too focused on sinking this Miyogi, so I don't actually notice the enemy fighters, or there they are, they just popped up on the minimap. And my guys fly straight past them. It actually looks like the enemy tried to do a manual attack on me looking at the minimap, but missed. But whatever. So I actually ordered my dive bombers in first on the Miyogi here. I've just realised the fighters are there and switch my fighters back to chase them down. Dive bombers are coming in, start a fire. And again, I decide to be a bit mean. I see the fires burning and decide that I'm actually not going to attack with my torpedo bombers just yet. I'm going to pull them back out of AA range. Basically wait till that Miyogi puts the fire out. And I figure that once that's done, it's my time to come in with torpedoes and hopefully we can cause some flooding. And yep, that fire's still burning. I also take note of which way the Miyogi's guns are pointing. And I think about it for a bit, but I decide that no, actually I'm going to bring my torpedo bombers in. I'm going to bring them in on this side of the Miyogi. Just because experience has shown that this Miyogi will turn into me when it looks like I'm about to launch a torpedo run. And if I attack it from this side, it means that it will turn all of its guns away from my allied battleship. We will hopefully get, a minute of basically free fire at the Miyogi while it has to turn its guns right the way around. But doesn't look like the Miyogi's up to it this time. Actually, it might not even have noticed yet. But it's put the fire out anyway, so it's time to launch my torpedo attack. And no, it has started turning into me, but in that situation it probably would be better to turn away because its turn puts its basically broadside onto my torpedoes. And, well, 5 torpedoes hit, but only 2 was needed to sink it. And I also got the arsonist medal because I let it burn. I did a lot of damage with that fire, and yeah, got a medal out of it. Then I realised that while that's been happening, my fighters have actually been chasing the enemy fighters right around the map. It's pretty clearly just flying around the outside to try and waste my fighters and my allies' fighters' time. But I know how to deal with this and essentially get my fighters to cut the corner, and hopefully we can get round there and intercept the enemy fighters. Which is a bit annoying that, well, that happened. But I was busy doing other things. And my interception looks like it's going well, and I said because enemy bombers have popped up on the minimap, and I thought they'd all be gone by now. But I'll focus on this interception first. Get the enemy fighters. There we go, so that's problems dealt with. And there's the enemy battleship that I'm obviously targeting. My dive bombers are almost there. And while the bombers weren't much to think of, there's only one of them left. And I believe it's actually just been shot down. And since it was only one squadron, I'm guessing that's the Hosho's bombers gone. So yeah, obviously they had 2 squadrons and a bit, but not enough to survive anti-aircraft fire. My dive bombers are coming on this Wyoming. 2 hits, 1 fire, it's a good start. And my torpedo bombers have rearmed and are back up in the air and heading this way. And now I've got nothing to do with my fighters because I'm pretty sure all the enemy aircraft have been shot down at this point. So I just order them back to circle around a friendly battleship. Just because there's nothing much for them to do anyway. Actually, one thing I could have done is order them to find the Hosho. Just because no one on my team's actually in position to protect our cap circle. So if the Hosho is pretty good, it could have actually snuck in there and capped. Especially since it's quite a fast ship. So that is actually probably a threat I should have done something to mitigate against. But instead I'm just going to leave my fighters circling pointlessly above an allied ship. Yeah. I mean, I probably could have gone. I had plenty of time if the Hosho started capping to get back there and spot it. And hopefully I could have got some bombers there in time anyway. But my torpedo bombers have almost arrived at this Wyoming. And I don't really bother lining up the attack because I figure it's on low health. It's basically the last enemy ship left that's got any potential to hurt us. Yeah, but maybe I should have lifted on 562 hit points. Which is actually a bit gutting, but I did get the high caliber medal out of that attack, so it's not all bad. It just feels really awful when it's like, yeah, 18,000 hit points down to 500 and you don't get the kill. And here comes my allies' torpedo bomber. Obviously they've taken a few losses themselves. It's coming in for its attack. If it hits, it'll finish it off. Don't see a torpedo. Must have aborted the attack. Pulled right back out. Again, fluffing around on the anti-aircraft fire is not really a good idea, but comes in for a second approach. And there we go. Seems like very long range, but well, the Wyoming avoids it pretty easily. And my dive bombers are almost here, coming up behind the Wyoming. And these guys should be able to finish it. Once I get my attack lined up properly. There we go. 4th enemy battleship sunk.
Battleship destroyed.
Pretty sure I've sunk all battleships. Yes, I have. I've sunk 4 battleships. Nothing else. I figure my job in an aircraft carrier is to sink enemy battleships and shoot down enemy aircraft, and I've done well in this game. In both of those respects. The only enemy ship left is the Hosho, which was briefly spotted in the far northwestern corner of the map. Well, not really northwestern corner, but in the northwest of the map. But there's only 10 seconds left in the game, so I'm not going to get my chance to sink it to get my Kraken Unleashed medal. But I can't complain too much. 12 bomb hits, 11 torpedo hits, 4 enemy ships sunk, Arsonist medal, high caliber medal, devastating strike, and 29 enemy aircraft shot down. It's a pretty good game. And yeah, well, top of my team, that Wyoming that got the Confederate medal also did pretty well. And you see here, damage, if you round them, add them all up, 110,000 damage. So to say, the Langley now, very powerful ship, but things could have gone horribly wrong if I had have lost that fighter engagement right back at the start. I mean, we went into there on even terms, and I slaughtered the enemy, but it could just as easily have slaughtered me, in which case the game, I said, probably would have had the same result, but it would have been much more challenging, and I wouldn't have done anywhere near as well. And, you know, I suppose that's what the changes have meant for the Langley. Very powerful, but needs a bit of luck for you to do well. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.